here we are at the base camp, lovely day outside. We're going to learn a bit about paintbrushes, rollers, how to open a paint can, close a paint can, pour it into another can so that you can walk it around the job site, and of course how to clean up some of our brushes and rollers after. So firstly, let's go over some of the different types of paintbrushes that there are out there. Most commonly, there's polynylon brushes, which are used for latex paints. There's bristle brushes, which are used for oil paints. And then there's staining brushes, which are slightly less expensive, more disposable brushes that you can use to stain decks and then sort of discard after. Now your first type of polynylon brush we're going to look at here is a 2.5 inch angle cut brush. This is used for dipping your paintbrush in the can and making straight lines. Making straight lines against two objects is what we refer to as cutting. So when we say cutting windows, we're referring to as making a straight line between the window frame that we're painting and the glass. When we talk about cutting ceilings on the interior, we're talking about making the straight line with the color from the wall to the white ceiling. Okay, so we use brushes to cut. Then what we do is we roll in the interior substrates. So if we're doing walls, we're going to cut the edges, roll it in. If we're doing windows, well, that's mostly a thin frame, so we're just going to do the brush work and the cutting. Okay, this is your most common starting brush. If you take a look at a 3-inch polynylon brush, you'll notice it's a bit bigger. It allows you to hold more paint. That's definitely the biggest advantage. And if you're going to dip your brush in the can 10,000 times this summer, it probably makes sense to be holding as much paint as you can in your brush to increase the speed at which you're able to put paint on certain substrates. The difficulty, it's harder to make straight lines with a big brush like this when you're getting started. So we're going to start as new painters with a smaller 2.5 inch brush, and by the time we get good, move up to a larger brush, probably about a month after painting, so that we can increase efficiency. Once you get really good, personally, I like to use what we call a Purdy 3.5 inch brush oval cut. This thing can hold probably 3 times the amount of paint that this brush can hold. It's a bit more difficult to maneuver. But once you're good at it, you dip it in the can and you can cut 10 straight feet of ceiling lines with one dip in the can. So you try to get better with your brushes as you go and become more comfortable. So those are latex brushes. Now there's a big difference, of course, between latex and oil paint products. These are the solvents that are used within the product. The paint is essentially defined by its solvent. Latex solvent is water. Oil solvent is mineral spirits. The two don't mix. If you ever put water and oil in a cup as a science experiment, I'm sure you'll see that they separate, they don't mix. You can't paint latex paints over oil paints ever. Now you can paint oil paint over everything, but recently they've been phasing them out due to environmental regulations. So most commonly latex paints are the most frequent that you'll find around job sites nowadays. But if you do come across oil substrates that are on the surface already, you have to make sure to prime them and then paint them with latex. You can't just paint latex over oil. It's a golden rule. Repeat after me. Can't paint latex over oil. Okay, good. So let's take a look at what oil paint brushes look like. They're the same thing, but they're actually made out of bristle, which is a bit of a different substrate. And this is what you should be using for all your oil paints. Don't mix up your brushes because, like we said, oil and latex don't mix. And of course, as you would get better over time, if you are in an older neighborhood with a lot of, oh, that's the polynylon one. Looks like I have 2 polynylon brushes here. I don't have a larger bristle brush to show you. But you'll be able to see as your manager and you go through paintbrushes the differences and how these are used for oil and these are used for latex. And then finally, we have stain brushes. 2 different kinds of stain brushes here. For example, we have your nice stain brush. Oh, this one is definitely, okay. So this is about a $5 brush, a little bit more disposable. It's gonna break and wear over time. Probably get one use out of it and have to throw it out. This is about a $12 brush, a bit nicer. It holds more stain. So you're gonna be able to get smoother, staining done across the boards. And it's gonna be able to stay for a little bit longer. You wanna make sure to wash your brushes out after every use, or at least if you're coming right back to it, wrap it up in plastic. Because as air gets to it, it's going to dry out the paint. Without air, it's not going to dry up. So even if you're coming back to a stain job the next day, wrap your stain brush in plastic, make sure it's vacuum tight, put that down. You should be able to come back the next day and take off that plastic and keep staining and keep painting with it. A brush like this, a polynylon one, should be able to last you the whole summer if you clean it every day properly. If you don't clean it every day, you're going to be buying a new one every day. And it's about a $12 brush. So $12 every single day is definitely not the way to be the most cost effective and make your most earnings this summer. So I advise you to really wash your tools out thoroughly at the end of every day. This brush I've had for about 1.5 years and it still holds up pretty fine, and it's because I wash it after every use very well.